Okay. Hi, my name is Sean Callagy of Callagy Law. I'm here with my certified matrimonial attorney partners, Chris Cavalli and Brian McCann. Brian, Chris, how are you?
Good.
All right.
Great.
And if you're watching this video, then you've either gotten a letter from us, heard about us somewhere, found us online, and the issue we're here to talk about today is what people should think about very early on in the process of contemplating or facing a divorce. Unfortunate, incredibly difficult set of circumstances, and I don't say that lightly, right? But a couple of things that people have to think about up front are the emotional dynamics that are involved and some of the very early on legal issues that need to be considered, right? Two important elements?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the first thing, and I'll turn to you, Chris, when people are in the early stages of this, emotions are flying high, and sometimes people make rash decisions without thinking about the consequences, obviously. And I'm not talking about violent or outrageous behavior. I'm talking about just very simple practical things. And the first thing I want to ask you about is the issue of precedent in the divorce process. So let's say you're getting divorced in Bergen County. It's early on in the process, and we do a lot of work in Bergen County. Yes?
Right.
Okay. How does precedent, and what am I talking about? How does that play a role in what goes on here?
Well, I think that people have to be very mindful of how they act, what they do, their living arrangements, as those impact not only themselves and their spouses, but the children, if there are children involved, and also their spending habits, and how that may be viewed subsequently by a court or even in a settlement process as creating a precedent for their divorce issues.
Right, so I'm sorry. So fair to say that when people are making decisions, let's say they make a decision, hey, I'm going to move out of the house. People may think, I need a break, I need a breather. But if they move out of the house, that's going to have potential significant consequences.
And in some cases that may be okay, but in some cases that may not be okay at all, because it will inevitably impact not only on the finances, because people may still have to pay for a house that they moved out of, but it will most likely affect their custody and parenting time arrangements with their children. The other side, the person still living in the house, could easily say, well, you abandoned the children, or you're not seeing the children as much, and use that against them when that person was only trying to make peace.
Right.
So it could backfire.
Right.
Yes.
So fair point to say that getting legal advice early on is critical in terms of living arrangements, spending habits, how things are going on with the children. In addition, obviously, to dealing with if you're involved, if you're being in some way, shape, or form subjected to unreasonable behavior, right, or being accused of engaging in unreasonable behavior, all of these things are important early on to document, protect yourself, from or against, either from the conduct or from the accusation if it's a false accusation, and also to make sure that things are squared away with your children and your finances.
Absolutely,
yes?
Absolutely,
Okay.
because every case is unique and no case has the same answer. So what is perfectly acceptable and maybe good in one case may be the wrong thing to do in another case.
Right. And we've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, clients that have not gotten the right advice and have made a decision, and it's dramatically impacted the next 7, 8, 10 years of their life and their relationship with their kids.
There's no
for
doubt.
example.
It can totally change the moves or moves that the moves you make or moves you do not make early on in the divorce or before the divorce can critically impact the case. Absolutely.
Right. All right. And now, Brian, we're talking about issues of emotion. And one of the big complaints that we hear frequently, and I happen to do a lot of speaking and a lot of talking to folks out there in the public, that they feel like lawyers don't care. And do you think generally that lawyers connect at a level that would make people feel like they care? Be honest.
Probably not, in most aspects of the profession.
Okay.
But particularly with what we do in divorce, it's critically important that your lawyer has an emotional connection or understands the emotional side of the process, because the client is going to be going through one of the most traumatic emotional experiences of their lives through a divorce process, and they're going to bring those emotions into the legal process. And if your lawyer doesn't know how to appreciate that and is appropriately empathetic with that and can help the client process those emotions to help the legal case, then the lawyer's doing a disservice to the client.
Right. Because don't you find that, which is completely understandable for people that are going through one of the most painful and traumatic experiences, whether the person filing for divorce or the other person filed, either way, this is an incredible change and full of trauma, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And by the way, the decision to follow through and actually get divorced is something that we highly recommend people do amazingly cautiously. Agree?
Absolutely.
Right? And it's not something to be easily done, because a lot of times people seek correct me, tell me what you think. Don't they seek emotional vindication through the process of divorce and think that they could punish the other side and harm the other side and create some outcome that they're seeking? But it doesn't really work that way. Would you agree?
Absolutely, and the part of the lawyer's role, if the lawyer is doing his job correctly, is to understand those emotions and be able to help the client get through those emotions and not make the wrong decision to try and be overly aggressive or take an unreasonable position because you are angry and you want to vent that anger out in a litigation context, which is only going to hurt your case.
Right. And another thing that I think people don't understand is that judges move their calendar, or try to move their calendar based on efficiency and speed. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Right? And that's how they're gauged. That's a lot of pressure that they're under, right? And we agree with that?
Right, absolutely.
And so the judges are trying to do the best job they conceivably can. Hopefully, for the most part, especially I think we have a very good group of judges in Bergen County, right, in the family law world, right? A terrific group. But they're under pressure. All civil judges are, family law judges are, criminal judges are, to move their case and move the docket. So a lot of times folks that I've encountered in a variety of different litigation contexts, now you both specialize and focus in family law, right? I've been involved in family law, but I do a lot of business litigation as well. And the things that I've seen is people think the judges care about who's good and who's bad. That's a mistake though, right? Would you agree?
That is a mistake. I think the judges try to be caring in their cases. They really do, but they have so many cases and they see so many things. They have to go by a set of rules, and their focus, of course, is on the children and making sure that the custody and parenting time arrangements are right. But after that, they are focused on the numbers and the support and the equitable distribution of assets and debts, and they have to apply a set of rules regardless of whether they think someone is the good guy or the bad guy.
And let me say it differently. So obviously judges are going to deal with what they are appropriately supposed to deal with, right, under the law. But they're not going to care about, he gave me a dirty look, she gave me a dirty look, they didn't say hello appropriately.
It is very hard for a judge to care to that level.
Or even to officiate that, right?
Exactly.
Like, so that's the challenge. Even if a judge cares, how are you going to enforce some of these types of issues?
In most cases where it is acrimonious, both parties are saying bad things about the other, and most of it is irrelevant to what the judge has to decide.
Right. So in the final 2 minutes of this video, let's address this issue. So we have to differentiate that situation where parties are full of legitimate emotion and have different perspectives and realities on what's occurred from a situation where, let's say, somebody's a narcissist involved. And by a narcissist, we mean somebody who takes no accountability, no responsibility, literally has no empathy, and has a legitimate borderline personality type disorder. And in that case, the job for the attorneys becomes a little different because that person is incredibly manipulative to try to turn the system against the person who's the honest merchant looking to get it done. And I think we've all dealt with people like that. Fair statement?
Absolutely.
Right. And so in that context, we're trying to get people through that process to get to a conclusion while not making it look like our client is the person complaining or we're the complaining attorneys, because that happens a lot, doesn't it?
It does happen a lot.
Where if you're responding to the wrongs, it's like in a sports game, it's the person who does the second shove.
Right.
A lot of times that gets the penalty flag thrown coming off of the Super Bowl that just occurred. Not making light of any of this, but you don't want the judge to perceive you as the person who's shoving back and not seeing the first shove.
Correct.
So there's an incredibly interesting process to talk about all that. All of this is a primer for two different approaches of communicating potentially with us. First, we're doing a webinar that's going to go into much greater detail on a number of the subjects that we're discussing. And we're setting a date for that webinar. And the whole idea of the webinar is to help people get to a place of an efficient and successful resolution to their family law issues or divorce process and feel like they're getting on with their life. Are you guys?
Correct.
Okay?
Absolutely.
And in the interim, though, if there's something that's pressing, right, and you're in the middle of considering a divorce or facing a potential divorce or a complaint's been filed against you, and you feel comfortable with what you've heard there today, we're happy to have a free consultation and sit down and talk with you. We're at Callagy Law here. Our number is 201-261-1700. I'm Sean Callagy, Brian McCann, Chris Cavalli. We'd be happy to help answer any questions with no obligation to retain us and move forward. We're out there to give hopefully, to have people have a little bit of a different perspective on what it's like to work with attorneys. We talk about being more caring, urgent, aggressive, to fundamentally change the way people feel about attorneys, one client at a time. That's our goal. We hope that we helped you today, and if you need some help, give us a call. Thanks.